Hey guys, Earth Twister here, and we're coming at you with an analysis video of Jubilee. Now, a lot of people online have been giving her a lot of hate, and while some of it may be well deserved, I feel like she deserves a better rap. She does phenomenal in just about any aspect you play her in, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the video as far as what key cards you want to use in each aspect and how well she might perform. But let's start off by talking about her kit and some of the things that I really like about her, and then we can move on to the aspects. So, Jubilee, or Jubilation Lee, on her alter ego side, she probably has one of the worst alter ego actions in the game. It just says search your deck for the shopping spree player side scheme and put it into play. And while that's okay, it's really not great. It's maybe a good thing to do on your first turn, but after that, you're only putting it out there to thin out your deck. So you're not going to use this action very much. And that side scheme is this one right here, which requires you to exhaust your hero or your alter ego in order to remove one threat here. And you can't remove threat basically any other way. Allies and heroes can't remove threat. All that can happen is if you have something like disguise, then you can remove all the threat right off, or you can use a support or something like that. But really, this is extremely difficult and pretty expensive to deal with, even though it's just two threat. That's sort of two activations for you. Now, the good thing is when you flip her up to her hero form, she has a great action ability there called like totally. It's a resource where if you exhaust Jubilee, you get to generate a wild resource, which is really good for her because her stats are not great. A 1-1-2 is just it's a little subpar and her health a little low. So that's not great, but her hero ability there with that resource generation on board is super great, especially if you're in an aspect or you have a deck built with a ton of readies. That's really, really good, especially because of some of these cards that we have in here, like Firecracker and Flash of Light, that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. The next card in her kit is Wolverine, and he is interesting. He's pretty good. He's kind of like a worse aggression Wolverine. He has the same stats, a 1-3, takes 2 consequential for attacking. His attacks do gain piercing, but I believe the aggression Wolverine actually heals 2 every turn or 1 every turn or something like that. And so it's not great. It flipping down to alter ego is okay, especially if you're in multiplayer, you can do that pretty easily. But when you're doing something in solo play, you better have those confused and stuns in order to keep Wolverine out on the table. But he is a great ally. If you have him out there, he can help you handle villains and minions that have tough. He's really good if you can get him on the table. But there are oftentimes other things that are a bigger priority for Jubilee. We've already talked about the shopping spree player side scheme, but let's talk about her two cards in her kit that I really, really love for her that really amp her up, in my opinion, that gives her a leg up that most other heroes don't have, and that is Jubilee's coat and Jubilee's sunglasses. Now, they're basically the same card, except they do something a little bit different each. So Jubilee's coat gives Jubilee a +1 thwart, so now she becomes a 2/1/2. And after you play a thwart event, you get to exhaust Jubilee's coat and choose a scheme. You remove one threat from that scheme for each different resource type used to pay for that event. That's really, really cool. And so are Jubilee's sunglasses, which does the same thing, but for attack. So she gets to have +1 attack, and then she can do the same thing that the coat does, but with attack events. So that's really cool because of the amount of a variety of resources in her kit. With your three doubles that come in her kit, they each have two different resource types on there, so you can use those to pay for some of her events or other events that you might include in her deck. That'll really amp it up once you have Jubilee's coat or sunglasses on the table. Though these two cards, in my opinion, are the best cards in her kit. They're the most sought for, the most used. They're just beautiful. They really, really make Jubilee a powerhouse. Maybe a glass cannon, but she's definitely a powerhouse. So the next card in her kit is Blinding Flash, and this can be really good if you're having a hard time with enemies that can be confused and stunned, because this really could help you get at least 3 enemies all at once, stunned and confused. Just depending on how many different resources you use to pay for this, and it can be a really, really good way to help you build. Just pay for this card. They're confused and stunned. Now you have a couple extra turns to do some things that you would like to do without having to worry too much about the villain getting away from you. Now her cards Firecracker and Flash of Light. Firecracker, you can see on each of these cards they have different resources, and that kind of helps pay for some of the things that we get from Firecracker, Flash of Light, and then of course the coat and the sunglasses here. Um, so if you have 2 firecrackers in your hand, you can choose which one you wanna play. It helps you vary up your resources a lot. And the firecracker allows you to deal 4 damage to an enemy, and if you paid for this card using 2 different resource types, stun that enemy. And then on top of that, with the sunglasses, you get to do 2 extra damage to an enemy, whether it's on the same enemy or a different one. It's really, really nice. You get a nice stun out of there. It's pretty inexpensive, but I feel like with Jubilee, you want more expensive stuff, and I'll talk about that too a little bit later. Flash of Light is the same thing, except, with schemes. You remove 3 threat from a scheme, and then if you paid for this using 2 different resource types, confuse an enemy. So it's really helpful when you're going up against enemies like Claw or anyone else that can be stunned or confused and aren't steady. It really gets you ahead of the curve there. Can be really, really good. Her grand finale card is a high damage card. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. So you're already dealing 2 damage for paying for 3. But then for each different resource type that you use to pay for this event, you choose an enemy and deal 2 damage to it. So if you're paying for this with 3 different resources, you deal 2 damage to an enemy, and then you can choose that same enemy 3 more times. So you're dealing 8 8 damage to an enemy. On top of that, you've got her sunglasses on the table. Suddenly, it becomes an 11 damage card. So this can be really good. It can also be a really good minion clearer. So if you're, say, going up against Ultron and you're having a hard time, this comes into your hand. You play this card. Even the upgraded Ultron drones can be destroyed because those usually just have 2 health at a maximum. So Jubilee's kit to me is just it works really well together, and it's really good at one thing, which is stunning and confusing. I would almost say that she is better than Miles Morales in stunning and confusing. She gets those statuses out there. She keeps things going. She keeps things moving. A lot of her events and stuff are free, not free. They're easy to play, pretty inexpensive. You don't have to discard upgrades. You don't have to wait to trigger certain things. It's just you pay for it and it's done. And she comes with an onboard resource generator, which only helps out. It only helps out. To me, Jubilee is just a phenomenal character. She's really flexible. You can use her in just about any aspect and do pretty well. Now, speaking of her aspects, let's go ahead and start talking about those aspects and which ones I think that she's probably weakest in versus the ones that she's strongest in. And then I'm also going to have a poll on my channel here in a little bit, asking you guys where you think Jubilee is on a scale of tier list scale. First aspect, which is the weakest, we're going to start with the weakest and move towards the strongest. The first one is protection. She's pretty good. She's got some good things that she can use. She's got some readies in there. She can pay for things, but she's weak. She has 2 defense, and you're really wanting to use her activation for the WAD resource there. So using her defense to defend and then not being able to do anything in the hero phase is really a big bummer. But as I got thinking about it, and I didn't build my Jubilee deck with this kind of build, but as I got thinking about it, I thought she would be a really great change of fortune character because she's doing things like taking Powerful Punch and taking it from a 4 cost or a 2 cost card for 4 damage and making it a 2 cost card for 6 damage, and you're able to take out even some really hefty minions like that. And even some of the minions that already have like toughness on them, you knock the toughness off with the 4 damage and you kill them with the 2. It's just a numbers game at that point, and she can do quite a bit with that. On top of that, you can use tackle to go ahead and get an extra stun in there. And if you use a physical resource, which you're going to use probably pretty quickly, pretty easily, you're able to confuse them, or you stun them. And then if you use a physical, you can deal 3 damage to them. It now becomes a stun and 6 damage if you have her sunglasses on the table. It's just a good card. It's a good card for her in that kit. And these are definitely some cards that I would recommend. Powerful Punch, you get to do 6 damage. Tackle is another additional stun that you can do so that you're not having to exhaust to defend on the villain phase. Of course, Change of Fortune is going to be good if you're using cards like Powerful Punch and things like that, just so you can recoup some of your loss there. Now, one card I just got, I hadn't had Drax up until recently, so I wasn't even able to include this in her kit, but I feel like it would be another good one, is you deal 4 damage to an enemy, and if that enemy is defeated by this attack, give your hero a tough status card. Would be a phenomenal card for Jubilee, because you're going to be able to do 3 plus 4, 7 damage there if you're using 3 different resources and the sunglasses are on the table. You're likely going to be able to defeat that minion or that enemy however you need to. Um, 4 damage, and then you're able to do an additional 3. So if you take out a 4 damage minion, now you're taking out a 3 health minion also. She's really great at minion control. She's really great at doing intense amounts of damage. So that's protection in a nutshell for Jubilee. Let me know what you guys think about protection for Jubilee and where she might fall in maybe a Change of Fortune type of build. The next thing I'm thinking about is here leadership. Leadership is really good for any X-Men, so it's kind of hard to beat leadership for X-Men, but I think that Jubilee is better in justice and aggression. That's the way it is. Uncanny X-Men, this will really help Jubilee be able to pay for those allies that you're wanting to get on the table, and then give them an extra hit point so they can stick around a little bit longer. And then you can be able to use mass attack. So now they're sticking around even longer because they're not getting consequential damage. They share a trait, X-Men, great. They're going out at dealing X damage to enemies where X is the total attack of those allies and your hero. So you're not exhausting your hero. You're getting to do, I don't know, an extra damage there for Jubilee, maybe 2 if you've got the sunglasses on the table. And if you have the sunglasses on the table, you're dealing another 3. Mass Attack is a beautiful card for Jubilee. You just have to have the right things in the right order. So it's kind of niche, which is why I don't think Jubilee is as great in leadership as she possibly could be. The aspect that I think that Jubilee is second best in here is Justice, and some of the cards that I'd really recommend for her definitely Float Like a Butterfly. Jubilee is already really good at thwarting, and so getting a float build going for her, she's going to be confusing the enemy, she's going to be attacking, she's going to be doing extra damage, and getting an extra point of damage for everything you do helps her sunglasses out so much, because not only now are you doing an extra damage or 2 or 3 from her sunglasses, you're now getting an extra damage on top of that, and on top of the event that you played. And Jubilee, and so the reason why I don't like Justice as much as I like Aggression for Jubilee is the fact that Jubilee, her events and the things that she does, she's good at thwarting on her own, I feel like. I don't think she needs to thwart as much. She also gets a ton of confuses, so she's able to just confuse the villain, confuse minions, and things are just going well for her with that in that regard. Again, steady, stalwart villains and minions, those cause her some trouble. Those are her weakness. I can grant that for sure. But once you've got Jubilee going, she can be really powerful with those confuses and things like that. And so that's why you want to use Float Like a Butterfly, because she's going to have them confused, and she doing extra damage with that is going to be really good. Stealth Strike I included in the deck that I built for her and the videos that I played. I did that because she needed more damage. But Stealth Strike is good in addition to that, because if you're doing damage and removing threat, it's really helpful. You got 4 damage to an enemy, and if that enemy is defeated by this attack, you remove 2 threat from a scheme. Not only are you doing 4 damage, but now you've got a 3-cost event that you paid for with a different resource, Jubilee Sunglasses, dealing extra damage. You're not really even concerned about removing threat, so just doing extra damage is really good. 3 steps ahead might be good for her. You're just able to remove a ton of threat and spread it out amongst different schemes, so you don't have to worry about too many things getting out of control, too many side schemes in play. you play 3 steps ahead, and now you're removing a ton of threat off of so many different schemes, and things are kind of going your way. So really, the trend for Jubilee is you want expensive cards that deal damage or remove threat, so that you can start removing a ton more with her coat, with her sunglasses. I mean, not only are you removing, so with 3 steps ahead, are you removing 2 threat from each scheme that you use a resource to pay for this, but you're removing an additional 3 threat from a different scheme. In single player, that's phenomenal. 3 threat is a threshold for so many schemes out there that's just a solid thing going on there. These cards, 10 out of 10 would recommend in a deck for her. 3 steps ahead if you're really going up against somebody that's going to have a lot of threat going, maybe like a red skull or something like that. That would be a really good build for. But Jubilee, phenomenal injustice. You really can't beat it except for with my favorite build ever, a Hone Technique aggression build for her. The kicker for Hone Technique can be a little hard to pay for, and only being able to draw it and then maybe having a few other priorities can be hard to get Hone Technique on the table. She's really great at damage anyways, so you don't need Hone Technique, but this can be a really great way to rush down the villain if you think that you're going to have a hard time with them. Get Hone Technique on the table as soon as you can, and once you do, make sure you have her sunglasses on, because now not only are you doing the extra damage for her sunglasses, but every time you use a mental to pay for that event, you're dealing the cost of that aggression event also on top of whatever the sunglasses do. So Hone Technique, phenomenal card for Jubilee. I agree with Villain Theory in that I really enjoy basing my deck off of that one that he created with her going Supernova. Solid card for Jubilee. Other cards I'd include again are high cost damage events. Drop kick, so you can definitely get that other stun, that draw. Getting a stun and a draw, always a good thing. You deal 4 damage, +3, stun and draw a card. You're most likely always going to hit that kicker there with Jubilee getting that physical resource. It's not hard. It's not hard. Great card for Jubilee. It becomes a 7 damage card and a stun and a draw for 3 cost. Not bad at all. Melee becomes amazing with Jubilee because not only are you doing 3 damage to 2 different enemies, you are now dealing 6 damage to 2 different enemies. And if you have Hone Technique on the table, it becomes 9 damage to 2 different enemies. Very good card for something like the Sinister Six, or even if you're going up against the Four Horsemen. Solid card. You're able to do a lot of damage with that. Full Body Charge, of course, is another epic card all on its own, especially if your hero's hit points are at half, which you may be at with Jubilee, just because she tends to not take damage well and can be pretty low on damage really quickly, on health really quickly. But get Full Body Charge out there, you aim for a minion, and you're dealing still a ton of damage to the villain. You go 8 damage on an enemy, and then you Hone Technique and use Sunglasses. That goes up from an 8 damage card to a 16 damage card just for 4 cost, as long as you're hitting that kicker of a mental resource and 4 different resource types to pay for it. Jubilee is extremely strong in aggression. I I love her in aggression. Now, there's a few cards. Um, I would almost auto include a ton more of them in this deck or in a Jubilee deck, but there's a few cards specifically in Basic that I would auto include. And the first one, multi-talented. You're always going to hit those 3 different kickers with Jubilee, and not only is it doing 2/2/2 with for 3 cost, now with the coat and the sunglasses on the table, you're doing 5/5/2. And that really helps Jubilee get healed. You're not having to flip down as much. So multi-talented, definitely an auto include. Take 3 copies. So good for her. Again, I agree. I agree with Nelson on the fact that that would be Jubilee's 17th, 18th, and 19th card. Like, you're gonna want this card no matter what. Something else that I might include is X-Gene. Is sort of an auto include, sort of not. X-Gene is helpful in paying for her events here. She has a ton of events in her kit, so that's great. But sometimes you may not have her events in your hand, and so now it's just a dead card on the field. But it can be really helpful in getting any kind of resource that you need to trigger any of these uh, special considerations on that card. Endurance is a really good card for her. It takes her hit points from 9 up to 12, gives her a little bit more survivability. Definitely a big help. And of course, X Jet is a beautiful card for her, generating a wild resource for anything that you want to pay for is always going to be good because then you are getting those kickers with blinding flash or with hitting a different type of resource for full body charge or something like that, where you're wanting to get the mental or you're just wanting to get more resources out to pay for that card. I mean, there's a lot to be said for Jubilee. And like I said, she's weakest in protection, but I think that she would be really good in a change of fortune type of build where you're defeating the enemies on their turn. You just have to have the right cards in the right place. But it's definitely going to be a good time with her on that. Aggression, 100%. I love her in aggression. She's so fast. As soon as you get her sunglasses and hone technique on the table, get a good aggression event in your hand, and no villain stands a chance. She can definitely do some serious damage to those villains that are steady and stalwart. The hardest part is trying to get those things built out, and if you get a few lucky draws with her, she's unstoppable. She is unstoppable. As far as Jubilee's concerned, I would say that she is a high B tier hero. I definitely think she's high B. She could be maybe a low A tier, maybe mid A to high B tier hero, just depending on the deck that you use with her and the villain that you're gonna face. She's a great hero. Gets a ton of stuns, a ton of confuses. She's handling threat. She's dealing massive amounts of damage. Things just they can go wrong with her if there's too much built out for the villain that you're having to handle those things without getting the things down that you need to. But she's got an onboard resource generator. You get another resource, couple of resource generators on the field, and you're doing some really good things with Jubilee. Just she's a really solid hero. I think she deserves a lot more respect than she gets. Definitely a solid mid A to high B tier hero. I'd love to hear what you guys think of Jubilee in the comments below. If there's anything that you think that I missed on this analysis of her, feel free to comment it down below, and I will remember to include it on future hero analysis videos, as well as potentially making some corrections later on down the road. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to smash that like button and that subscribe button if you're brand new. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and we'll see you in the next video.